I don't generally gravitate towards post-apocalyptic stories. Well, a certain kind of post-apocalyptic stories. A dead world simply isn't that engaging to me, but when I do like post-apocalyptic stories, they're usually easy on the post, if that makes sense. I like stories where the world is ending, or has just ended, and where the characters and audience don't really have any clue what's going on. Just a sick sense of change and finality and slowly deadening hope. I think it's because these stories have way less overstimulating lore and exposition and have time to focus on what makes basically any story interesting, the characters. How do characters act when they have no clue what's going on? When they realize their institutions are starting to fail them? This is the world of No, I'm Not a Human, a game that came out a few weeks ago from Russian studio Trioskaz. You play as a loner living on the outskirts of town, in a house inherited after the death of a vaguely abusive father. The sun's gotten too hot. Maybe it's a burst of solar energy, maybe something else. Either way, being outside during the day is akin to taking a stroll through an easy-bake oven the size of the Earth's surface. People take to being outside only at night. The issue is, they're not the only ones walking the night. There are new beings, creatures that resemble humans that the news starts calling visitors. Nobody is sure what they are, but they're certain that they want to kill you. You have to make sure you're never home alone, so that means inviting strangers in when they come knocking. Just make sure they're not visitors. Your neighbor apprises you of this and selflessly stays the night at your place, leaving his wife and daughter behind back home to make sure you're safe. He gives you some root beers too. You can use these to expend your energy and sleep, which I found a bit odd since, if anything, drinking a root beer usually gives me a sugar rush, but hey, maybe these are special Russian root beers. His sweet young daughter comes to get him that night and bring him home. From then on, you're on your own, and the game begins. The gameplay is basically 2 cycles. At night, guests come to your door. Once they knock, you can peer at them through the peephole and interrogate them. Eventually, it's up to you to decide whether to let them in or send them packing. The people are obviously absolutely horrifying looking, which I think is the source of this game's charm. They're clearly edited photos of real people, looking like a sort of mix of an analog horror character and Tim and Eric Cinco ads. I love this because if you've ever lived in an apartment with a peephole, you know that the fisheye visual warp makes anybody, even the most trusted friends, look absolutely freakish and sinister. They might try to guilt trip you or ply you with bribes, but you are the first line of defense for your house. It feels like a mix of mechanics from 2 games I love, Silent Hill 4 and Papers, Please. Silent Hill 4 because, like in that game, you're stuck in this tiny apartment with your main aperture being the peephole. Both these games understand how creepy peepholes can be and use that to the desired effect. And then Papers, Please in the sense that you're making decisions whether to admit or expel people based on clues and judgments you're making. These feel like the 2 platonic ideals of No, I'm Not a Human's gameplay. At night, you can also peer out the windows to track what life outside the apartment is turning into. Most of it, as you can imagine, just gets worse and worse. The other side of the gameplay is the daytime. Here, you interrogate your guests and learn more about them and their stories. Most importantly, though, you test them. See, each day, the news brings you another marker that differentiates visitors. These include bloodshot eyes, perfect teeth, dirty nails, and several others. You can expend a point of energy conducting a test on the visitor and can either let them go or shoot them based on the results. Now, there is obviously a huge issue here. These physical markers might denote visitors, but they're also perfectly explainable for normal humans too. Maybe someone was crying, or hasn't showered, or is blessed with naturally straight, perfect teeth like yours truly. Also, these aren't one size fits all. Sometimes visitors don't have several of these markers, and normal people have multiple. It's all about guessing, making informed decisions, and taking risks. You can only tell who is truly a visitor after they're dead. The whole thing seems very much inspired by The Thing, a movie that, if you haven't seen yet, I genuinely pity you. Innocent humans leave behind trash bags when you kill them, and visitors leave behind these incredibly disturbing remains with the gore pixelated out. A chilling little commentary of the casual violence of the game. You have to just do the best you can. There's items you can order for delivery or obtain from bribes that affect your energy and chances at survival, like coffee, candy, cigarettes, and gamer fuel, but most of these have drawbacks too. You might think, well, I can just make sure that all the people inside my house are real humans and just not let anyone else in. The game checks that though. See, to deal with a crisis, a government task force called FEMA forms. It could just be a coincidence that it shares an acronym with the American agency, but I'm not sure. But as you can guess, at the speed of post-Soviet governance, FEMA starts acting as a paramilitary battalion of murderers very, very quickly. On certain nights, they come and demand to take one of your guests away for testing. You can guess whether these test subjects ever come back. So you need to refresh your supply of guests or else you'll be alone. Trust me, you really don't want to be alone. Anyways, the characters are obviously the stars of the show here. Some are very important for the story, but others are just people. Some are specific types that you would imagine would emerge in a world-ending situation. Opportunists, conspiracy theorists, and of course people utterly defeated by fear and sadness. Others are specific character types, types you're familiar with and have seen a ton across media in your own life, like The astrology fanatic, the movie-obsessed slacker, the lovelorn poet, and the guy with his mouth stitched shut. But others are just normal people you would meet on the street who are trying their best to survive and navigate the changing world. Sometimes keeping them alive long enough to the point you can reach the end of their dialogue tree gets you a small reward, almost like finishing a side quest. These might be a unique animation or just a little scrap of what their lives were like before the world ended. Each guest has a story to tell. Everyone has things that they missed out on, people they left behind, lives they never lived. Regrets fill up the house like unwanted guests. It's all oddly meditative and somber for a game where you can just blow everyone up with a shotgun. Like many artsy Eastern European games, this game has a lot of different endings. If you want to experience them all, you'll just have to play through the game over and over. I love how the character's freakish, deformed look perfectly communicates the game's themes of mistrust. Every one of them could be a monster. That said, only a very small number are always visitors or always humans in a playthrough. The vast majority are randomized. Some characters that are humans in one playthrough that you form a genuine bond with will be murderous monsters in the next that you have to put down. There's so many I grew to love and so many I grew to hate. Some characters become almost good luck charms where I always let them in because of good experiences in a past playthrough. I get super sad when these were killed by visitors or taken away by FEMA. And it's even worse when they become visitors themselves and you have to put them down like Old Yeller. More on the act of killing later though. The game is about in influences and tonal inspirations. I already mentioned Silent Hill 4, Papers, Please, and The Thing, so I'll kind of just rapid fire the rest that I noticed. The Soviet post-apocalyptic world seems to be a loving tribute to the film Letters from a Dead Man, and it's even somewhat stalkerish. There's quotations directly from the anime film Angel's Egg and the horror movie Mother, but the inferior American one, not the Bong Joon-ho movie. Visually, the game has a lot of internet influences, whether from analog horror, viral hoaxes, or, I think this guy's face might be Daniel Larson. Another character is clearly inspired by the look of Christian Bale in The Machinist, and later that same character looks like a famous painting of a certain not very nice pasty cowboy. I think this game might have driven me insane, but is this guy like a reference to a Courage the Cowardly Dog cutaway jump scare?
You're not perfect.
I'm probably just crazy, but this game and that moment definitely share a tonal vibe. There's probably a ton I missed. Type them up in the comments. Anyways, here's the time to warn you about spoilers. Usually I do this just in case, but a few viewers have actually told me they jump ship to play the game in other videos and come back to watch it later. It took me about 15 hours to get all the endings without looking anything up. I'll say now, if this game looks interesting to you at all, go buy it and play it and come back when you get a few endings. It's a fun game. Well, it's not fun, but I think you'll enjoy it. It's like how going to a really nice funeral for someone you cared about is enriching in some way, and afterwards you're glad you went, but you really couldn't call it fun. The spoilers here are pretty massive. Just come back when you're done, and if you like the video, please do subscribe. My dream is to hit 10k subs before the end of the year, and honestly, that's looking doable. Skip to the time on screen for no spoilers. Anyways, after the first night, your neighbor's young daughter comes looking for him, and he goes back home. Once the gameplay loop begins, certain characters emerge. There is of course FEMA, as I already mentioned, who come by to take your guests and never give them back. As time goes on, they basically become a totalitarian regime. At a certain point, your neighbor's daughter comes to your door in tears. Your neighbor's been killed by visitors and his house burnt down by FEMA. You promised him earlier you'd protect his girl, so unless you're truly heartless, you take her in. She's obviously distraught by what happened. You can choose whether you want her to have to face reality or comfort her with lies. There's also this bald guy who speaks in this very poetic but vague language. He instructs you to take in a cat when it comes by. Eventually it does, but unfortunately you have to let in its owner as well. She's a very strange character, and I'm not just talking about how she looks. She talks in this extremely strange, primitive way and has this very mocking tone to her voice, like she knows so much more than you. She's also clearly a visitor, like she has literally all the hallmarks of one. She says she's a ballerina, and when you take an aura photograph of her, which is a later visitor test, she appears in this creepy ballerina pose. But at the same time, even though she's obviously a visitor, in my experience, she never actually killed anybody. This is the first sign that visitors are much more mysterious than you might think. Another repeating character is the delivery man. He's initially pretty chipper, but as you keep making orders, he gets more and more crestfallen and beaten down by life. And then there's the pale visitor, basically this game's mascot. You first see him out the window after he massacres a group of teenagers. When he comes to your door, you know right away not to let him in. He's also incredibly taunting like the cat lady, but he speaks in a much more clearly threatening tone. He's specifically trying to demoralize you and inspire fear. He ends every interaction with asking, "Are you alone?" Don't tell him you are unless you want some company. This is probably the first ending that a lot of players will get. You've been killed, and over time, the proof you ever existed begins to fade away. Jeez. It's not as gruesome as some of the other endings, but very sad and frankly realistic to the setting. Also, I need to mention how cool these ending scenes are. Throughout your playthrough, the game changes art styles more than something that frequently changes things in a humorous way that my audience can relate to does, but the endings all have these somber 2D paintings with really beautiful writing, and each has a unique song. Anyways, that leads us to another likely early ending, and the first one I got. See, a human vigilante maniac starts showing up at your door. He's intent on killing all visitors, and he's not afraid at all of killing some humans on the way. Eventually, he does the same test on you that you've been giving your guests. If you fail, you and him get in a shootout. You get the upper hand, but the experience leads you to become an avenging angel yourself, especially given the fact that your kind, helpful neighbor was this lunatic's brother. You vow to become a scourge of all people who use violence to instill fear in others, but it's obvious from the guy you just killed where this journey of bloodshed will inevitably lead you. This is mirrored in another ending, the one you get if you kill too many humans during your playthrough. Pushed by fear and guilt, you try to kill yourself, but you're too cowardly to even pull the trigger. I guess it's easier to kill others than yourself. With nobody left, an angry mob attacks you and throws you out of your house. The gun you wielded to kill others is gone. You're as vulnerable as your victims once were, as you realize that the engorged sun is starting to rise. There's no one left to blame. The last of the objectively bad endings, and one I got way too much, is if you survive until the end of 13 days but still have some visitors as your guests. You bar up the windows and take refuge in the basement, but eventually the visitors you let in turn on you and tear you apart. Were they visitors after all though, or is humanity just that ugly? Anyways, if you make it to the end with no visitors, the ending starts the same, but eventually you survive until fall, and it's revealed that, at least for now, the power of the sun has abated. You're free to leave the basement, but it's unclear what kind of world you're returning to. The player character feels disappointed. You've survived, but the other shoe will drop again next summer. What will you do then? How long can you keep scraping by? It's not the happy ending you thought it would be. Also, this is a personal gripe, but there's no bonus or achievement for keeping the neighbor's daughter safe and alive until the end, which was a bit disappointing as I went through great lengths to make sure she didn't get taken or killed. Anyways, we need to keep trying to find a satisfying ending. Another option involves a death cult that forms in response to society's collapse. The leader of the cult seeks to commune with death and find peace within it. He wants to use your house as a site of a ritual and tasks you with keeping 3 of his acolytes safe. These 3 are great because they're never actually visitors and they're super expendable, but if you do keep them alive, the ritual is a success. It's odd though. The cult seeks death as a comfort. They're still scared of non-existence though. In fact, they think death will protect them from non-existence. It seems oddly counterintuitive. They speak of death almost as a mother goddess that will offer comfort and reassurance, not as an inevitable part of life. Anyways, this ending is a little cryptic. Some force beyond mortal ken arrives and spirits us away to an abode of true peace, represented by our familiar house floating in space. Humanity was never meant to survive the madness of the cosmos. It also feels oddly unsatisfying, like there's something still not complete. Another bizarre ending comes with this ostensibly normal and attractive woman that comes to your door. She's incredibly, friendly and immediately takes a spot in your bed. But if you send her away, some cryptic dialogue reveals she definitely has specific designs for you. She continues to flirt with the player and offer comfort, and it's pretty clear off camera you begin sleeping with each other. Each night her belly grows bigger and bigger, as if she's just speedrunning the phases of pregnancy. When you question her about it though, she denies it. Eventually her baby is born, rupturing through her stomach. You have to find it in the house, and then you get a vision of it suckling at a she-wolf like Romulus and Remus. Strange worshippers wearing angel wings arrive and tear the child away from you. They kill the baby and accept you as some kind of prophet, though the fact they drag you away makes you wonder if you'll become a sacrifice just like your child. But was it your child? Was she already pregnant? Again, it seems she targeted you specifically for some reason. Now, I hardly know anything about the Book of Revelations, but this all seems to be some sort of antichrist illusion. Mostly though, I just think this ending stands for the birth of some new form of organized religion that will come about in the shattered world, one that attaches itself to life rather than death. The new sect seeks you out as a figure that will deliver them from disaster. A much more normal ending is one where you simply obey FEMA and get offered a job. You can do this by never disagreeing with a FEMA official who comes to your door, calling their hotline frequently, and correctly marketing visitors for them to take away. Even your character thinks the recruitment process is strange, and I think this ending goes to show just how absurd and arbitrary organizations like this are. In the ending text, lots of questions are raised, but none are answered, or will be. You've become a cog in a machine that produces a nonsensical product that you'll never truly understand. But maybe following orders is better than hiding in the dark and waiting for the end to come. There's one more ending before what I see as the canonical good ending, and there's not really much I can say about it. If you have certain dialogue with the tarot reader character, this mushroom sage comes to your door. He makes you perform the tasks that are found in a page of the Book of Smiles to keep the Mushroom Festival from happening. There's not much I can say about this. It feels like a joke ending, but maybe I'm just missing something. Again, I think it highlights people's dependence on ideology, with a specific ideology not being organized religion or even a cult, but just you and some grubby old crazy guy trying to save the world from mushrooms. Anyways, there's one more ending, the one that I view as the canonical good ending. That said, we're not going to talk about it just yet, but I hope you stick around to hear. For now, we need to talk about what the game is really about. Early on in the game, I think I understood what it was trying to say. It was a metaphor for the pandemic. Being forced to stay home and not leave the house, the distrust in others, and constantly looking for symptoms that could be explained by something as mundane as a cold or allergies. The misinformation in the media and the birth of bizarre conspiracy theories. If you remember the early pandemic when we barely understood the virus, people were saying all kinds of things and nobody was really sure what would happen or how serious it would be. There's even some hilarious tongue-in-cheek moments. When the FEMA guy first comes to your door, you ask him about his suit and whether you should be wearing one. He says, no, you don't need it, but you can buy one if you want. That totally mirrored what I remember with face masks, when the CDC went from telling us they were unnecessary, but you could wear one if it made you feel better, to finding out that they were completely essential. At some point, the news gets hijacked and tells you that testing ears works to find out who is a visitor, though maybe your brain just implanted it. This isn't true at all though, and when you try to use the test with a maniac, he draws the gun on the spot. Misinformation abounds everywhere. But honestly, I think that's too simplistic. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure many parts of the game were directly inspired by the developers' experience with the pandemic, but this game is about something much bigger. This is a game about death, specifically the fear of death. This game reminds you over and over that death will visit you. The Pale Horseman, the stranger at the feast, the skull in a Dutch still life, the angel, the reaper, the worm.
Look yourself in the mirror. Death is going to visit you one day. Sometimes unexpected, and you guess what? You're gonna have a problem.
Death will visit you. Death surrounds you in this game. The guests are constantly talking about death, whether they desire it, are ready for it, or fear it. They share their ideas of what death will bring and even ask you for reassurance. And you're forced to be the agent of death. When you're about to shoot someone, the character's either yelling at you or begging for your life. But what I thought was really interesting is that their final line of dialogue before you kill them only shows up for a couple frames. It's so stark. They're immediately gone from this earth, like they never existed. Their last words barely heard, and there's no way to see them again. There's this character who always comes on the first night and is always a visitor. It's this creepy lady who tells us she works as a cashier with the slanted shoulders and the haircut that the baristas in the coffee shop on the cool side of town has. She fails every test and is so obviously a visitor, but she's not even putting up an act, frequently asking for reassurance. Before you shoot her, she asks if she can cover her eyes, if she can live for just a second longer. I hated killing her even when I knew she was a visitor. Visitors are scared of death too. Do visitors even know they're visitors? Do they really deserve to be killed? But what are visitors? Many characters offer different theories. Maybe they're aliens, zombies, reflections of humans, creatures awoken who are slumbering in the center of the earth. In fact, there are so many possibilities and so little clarity, I don't think the developers wanted their players to have a single takeaway. But there's one line of dialogue that I found especially profound. It's from the Gravedigger, a character who I found myself especially drawn to. As someone intimately familiar with death, he theorizes that maybe visitors aren't the living dead. Maybe they're unburied thoughts, fears and regrets we try to bury but come clawing to the surface. The more scared you are, the closer they get. See, call me crazy, but I think the visitors represent these thoughts and anxieties and fears about death we leave buried but come to us unbidden. Sometimes we can block them out, but sometimes we let them in. The Pale Man doesn't represent death itself. He tells us he's not the leader of the visitors, and he's more intent on destroying our spirit than physically hurting us. In fact, he only does come in when we practically invite him. The Pale Visitor is not death itself. He's the fear of death, or more specifically, the realization that we will all die. He reminds you of his presence for no reason other than to upset you. He strikes when you're alone and in the dark. He torments you, reminding of your failings and disappointments and powerlessness. I think we're all scared of death in some way, especially those of us who've been close to it. And if you aren't, make sure you comment it down below so everyone knows how cool and tough and badass you are. Like most kids, I was curious about death. I also had some life events beyond my control that made me aware of death, and specifically my death, much earlier than most children. That first realization that whatever animated my brain and body would one day disappear, and my corpse would rot underground until nothing was left, upset me immensely. I realized how horrifying the idea of non-existence was. The thought led to countless anxious nights, countless panic attacks. Even now when I think of it, something in my heart rears up and wants to jump out. My response to the fact that I will have to die hasn't changed since I was that little boy. How do I deal with it? I distract myself. I don't think about it. I assure myself that even if I'm not ready now, when death visits me, I will somehow be ready. I think many people's first visualization of death leads to a sort of break in their consciousness. Some cope with that realization with distractions like me. Some find a symbol that they feel will outlive them and dedicate themselves to it in the hope it will give them comfort and succor, and they will live on in the afterlife. The realization makes some compassionate, knowing that we are all made just to die and life requires gentleness to make peace with that. It makes others cruel, like a child who breaks others' toys because he knows he can't possess them. Some let the idea of death rule their lives until they become obsessed with death as a savior or seek it out as an escape. Some respond with anger to death and live life as if they're defying it exists. Some make their world smaller and smaller just to extend that due date as long as logically possible, knowing all along they're just delaying the inevitable. Some claw against the tide until death finds them unprepared. And some people, I don't know, eat mushrooms and go on vision quests. But nobody escapes it. This brings me to the last ending I haven't mentioned, the one I see as the canonical good ending. Remember the cryptic bald guy and creepy cat lady I mentioned? Let's try following exactly what he says. With a cat in your house, you'll be able to access the basement. If you expend multiple days worth of energy in digging a hole in the dirt, you come to an underground tunnel. Inside is a stranded miner. The miner and his friends dug deep in the earth to survive and escape the sun, but eventually found a specifically ominous pit. A low hum is coming out of it. Before long, the bald guy comes back and speaks cryptically that she has abandoned him, before telling us to jump in the pit. Once we do, we find ourselves standing on the surface of a green, endless ocean. In the sky, an aurora borealis forms into this strange shape of light. This is death herself, who the cultists were seeking, who the bald man and the cat lady were doing the bidding of. She had sent them to deliver her to us, and we finally found her. I wonder if the cat is her messenger or like her avatar on the earth. She's not so much of a god, more just a concept personified. We're actually able to have a conversation with her. She tells us that even though the multitudes who fear her could build a grand city, we shouldn't be scared. She is the unwanted sibling, the outcast in the family of humanity, the inventor of time. God, this game's writing can be good when it wants to be. Even though we're scared, she offers solace to us alone. She'll take us into the night, where the pine trees reach up to the stars. We find ourselves in a calm, green valley. We walk up to our house, where we've spent the whole game but have never seen the outside. As we enter, we ask questions of death and seek reassurance, but she won't answer. We are in an image of the poster we see on the wall. We're alone. Time doesn't pass. But we feel calm. Maybe we have everything we need. We have so many questions, but we'll never get answers. I hope this lasts a little longer, we think. It's lonely, but comfortable, lying in the grass outside. Maybe we can just take a short rest. Of course, we want to avoid death. Of course, we're scared of it. But death is sleep, and sleep is peace, and don't we spend our lives looking for a peace that's so complete it lasts forever? It's almost like a state of nirvana. Obviously, this game didn't make me not scared of death anymore. That would require undoing decades of neural pathways and centuries of the inherited need to survive at all costs. I didn't learn any deeper truths to calm myself or you on our road through life. But it made me think about hope. When death visits me, I hope I fight. But if I can't, when death visits me, I hope I don't want to run. I hope I don't feel afraid. Maybe dying is like slowly drifting off to sleep in a lonely but comfortable place. Like taking a long nap in the high grass at the end of a summer's day. Anyway, that's my read on the game. That doesn't mean there aren't many other ones you could come to yourself that should be celebrated. Maybe you're disappointed that so much of the game was open-ended and mysterious by the end. Very few questions were actually answered. I tend to like it that way, and though I get the disappointment, I think it worked with the game. I mean, I kind of knew it would be like this going into it. After all, the people who made this game are Eastern Europeans, the kings of making cool, weird stuff and then refusing to explain it. It's an extremely special game. You should play it. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you so much for your time, dear viewer. I wish you all the good fortune in the world. I remain your faithful snuggler.